Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. Why did your grandparents' generation rarely talk about the constant joint aches, the sluggish digestion, and the bone-deep fatigue that so many people now treat as a normal part of getting older? It isn't luck. It isn't genetics either. Researchers who study the handful of places on Earth where people regularly live active, pain-free lives well past 90 have found one habit almost every single one of those communities shares. They drink something fermented every single day, usually homemade, usually costing pennies, and usually completely ignored by modern medicine because there is no patent on a mason jar sitting on a kitchen counter. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because by the end of this video you will know exactly which 12 drinks these communities depend on, how each one works inside an aging body, and how to make every single one of them at home with ingredients you can find this week. Some of what is coming up genuinely surprised me while I was researching this, especially the one at position 7, so do not skip ahead. Before we get into it, if you are the kind of person who wants real, practical information instead of another supplement ad disguised as health advice, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. New videos like this one go up regularly, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Alright, let's get into the 12 drinks. Number 1. Kefir. Long before anyone had a microscope powerful enough to see bacteria, shepherds in the mountains between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea were guarding small lumpy clusters they called grains as though they were family heirlooms. And in a sense they were. These grains were passed from mother to daughter for generations, and legend holds that a community would sooner go hungry than sell or trade them to outsiders. What those shepherds were protecting turns out to be one of the most concentrated sources of beneficial bacteria available anywhere. When kefir grains are added to milk and left to sit for about a day, the resulting tangy liquid can contain dozens of distinct bacterial and yeast strains working together. Compare that to a typical store-bought probiotic capsule, which usually offers somewhere between 2 and 10 strains, and you start to understand why traditional cultures treated this drink as medicine rather than food. Researchers studying regular fermented food consumption have documented measurable drops in inflammatory markers within a matter of weeks, which matters enormously if you are dealing with stiff joints, irregular digestion, or the frustrating sense that your body simply does not bounce back the way it used to. Making it at home is almost embarrassingly simple. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of live kefir grains to 2 cups of whole milk in a clean glass jar, cover loosely with a cloth, and let it sit at room temperature for about 24 hours. Strain out the grains, refrigerate the liquid, and drop those same grains straight into a fresh batch of milk. One purchase of grains, properly cared for, can produce kefir indefinitely. Skip the sweetened kefir drinks sold in grocery stores. They carry a fraction of the live culture and a mountain of added sugar working directly against everything you are trying to accomplish. Number 2. Beet Kvass. Walk into an older Eastern European kitchen and there is a decent chance you will find a jar of deep ruby liquid sitting quietly on the counter, unlabeled, because everyone in the house already knows exactly what it is and what it is for. Beet Kvass has 3 ingredients: raw beets, salt water, and thyme. That is genuinely the entire ingredient list, and it has stayed that way for as long as anyone can trace the tradition back. Grandmothers reached for a small glass of it whenever digestion felt sluggish or energy dipped, long before anyone could explain the biochemistry behind why it worked. Modern nutrition research has since caught up with the folk wisdom. Beets are exceptionally rich in natural dietary nitrates, compounds your body converts into nitric oxide, which relaxes and widens blood vessels and improves circulation throughout your entire system. Better blood flow means more oxygen reaching your brain, your heart muscle, and the muscles in your legs that make walking up a flight of stairs feel effortless instead of exhausting. Fermentation adds an entirely separate benefit on top of that circulatory boost, loading the drink with beneficial bacteria that support gut health simultaneously. That deep red color comes from compounds called betalains, which laboratory studies have linked to anti-inflammatory activity. So the color you are looking at is not just visually striking. It is a visible marker of the biology at work. To make it, peel and cube 2 medium beets, drop them into a clean quart jar, add a teaspoon of sea salt, and fill the jar with filtered water, leaving about an inch of space at the top. Cover with a cloth. Leave it on the counter for 3 to 5 days, pressing the beets under the surface once daily. And once the liquid turns deep red and pleasantly tangy, strain it and refrigerate. A small glass before meals is the traditional dose, and the used beets can be fermented a second time with fresh salt water before you finally toss them. Number 3. Switchel. This is the drink that quite literally fueled the building of a country. Long before sports drinks existed in any form, farmers working brutal 12-hour days under a summer sun kept clay jugs of switchel within arm's reach in the field, and it was the only thing standing between them and heat exhaustion. The recipe never changed in 200 years. Apple cider vinegar, fresh ginger, molasses, or honey, and water. For ingredients doing the exact job that an entire modern industry now charges you for in neon-colored plastic bottles. The vinegar supports healthy digestion and mineral absorption. The ginger calms inflammation in overworked joints and muscles. And the molasses replaces the magnesium and potassium your body loses through sweat, the exact minerals responsible for muscle cramping when they run low. When commercial sports drinks hit shelves in the 1960s, switchel vanished from American kitchens almost overnight, and nothing in those bright bottles actually replaces what real molasses delivers in a form your body recognizes and uses efficiently. If you deal with muscle cramps, afternoon energy crashes, or slow recovery after any kind of physical activity, this one is worth bringing back immediately. To make it, stir 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses or raw honey, and either a teaspoon of freshly grated ginger or half a teaspoon of dried ginger powder in 2 cups of cold water. A pinch of sea salt is optional but adds extra minerals. The entire process takes under 2 minutes, and you can drink it immediately or chill it first. Number 4. Kombucha. Somewhere in your family's history, an ancestor was almost certainly brewing this on a kitchen counter without ever calling it a wellness trend, because it was simply what people did. Kombucha starts as sweetened black or green tea, and a living culture known as a SCOBY, essentially a community of bacteria and yeast working in partnership, is placed inside and left to ferment for 1 to 4 weeks. During that stretch of time, the culture slowly consumes the sugar and produces organic acids, B vitamins, and natural enzymes that support both digestion and liver function. That liver connection deserves more attention than it usually gets. A liver that processes waste efficiently means less fatigue, clearer skin, and noticeably sharper mental clarity, all of which become increasingly important once you pass 60. When liver efficiency naturally slows and decades of medications, processed food, and everyday environmental exposure have had time to accumulate. Communities across Russia, China, and Germany brewed versions of this for generations, long before researchers began studying the science behind what people were already experiencing firsthand. Store-bought kombucha is technically the real thing, but pasteurization and long shelf storage significantly reduce the live culture count compared to a batch you brew yourself. To make your own, brew 2 liters of black or green tea, stir in a cup of sugar until fully dissolved, and let it cool completely to room temperature. Pour it into a glass jar. Add your SCOBY along with a cup of starter liquid from a previous batch or a bottle of raw store-bought kombucha. Cover with a cloth, and leave it at room temperature for 1 to 2 weeks, tasting starting around day 7. Once it reaches a pleasant tartness, bottle it and refrigerate. A single SCOBY, cared for properly, will keep producing kombucha for years. Number 5. Traditional ginger beer. What sits in the soda aisle labeled ginger ale today shares almost nothing with what people once called ginger beer, aside from the name on the label. Commercial ginger ale is carbonated water with a splash of ginger flavoring added at the end of production. Real, traditional ginger beer is a living fermented drink, built from something called a ginger bug, a wild culture of yeast and bacteria cultivated directly from fresh ginger root, water, and sugar over the course of several days. The fermentation process naturally carbonates the drink while preserving the full strength of ginger's active compounds. The same compounds researchers have studied extensively for their effects on nausea, inflammation, joint discomfort, and circulation. Commercial processing strips most of that potency away through heat and filtration. Communities across the Caribbean, West Africa, and rural farming regions of America brewed real ginger beer as both a daily tonic and a household remedy for everything from an upset stomach to a low-grade fever. If joint stiffness, sluggish digestion, or occasional nausea sound familiar, and they tend to become more common once stomach acid production naturally declines with age. Traditional ginger beer tackles both the inflammation and the digestive sluggishness in one glass that costs almost nothing to make. To start, combine a teaspoon of grated fresh ginger with a teaspoon of sugar in a small jar of water and feed it the same amounts daily for 5 to 7 days until it actively bubbles on its own. Then mix 4 cups of water with 3 tablespoons of fresh ginger juice, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a quarter cup of your active ginger bug liquid. Bottle it in flip-top bottles. Leave it at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until carbonated, then refrigerate. Keep feeding the bug daily, and it will produce ginger beer indefinitely. Number 6. Fermented turmeric drink. Turmeric has a well-documented problem that frustrates researchers and health enthusiasts alike. Its star compound, curcumin, is genuinely difficult for the human body to absorb, and most of what you swallow in capsule or powder form passes straight through without ever reaching your bloodstream in a meaningful amount. This is exactly why turmeric supplements so often underdeliver compared to the impressive results seen in laboratory studies. Long before anyone understood the chemistry, traditional communities across Sri Lanka and southern India were fermenting fresh turmeric root in clay vessels with water and natural cultures, drinking the resulting golden, tangy liquid daily to manage joint discomfort, digestive inflammation, and weakened immunity. Fermentation breaks down the tough cellular walls of the root and converts curcumin into forms the body appears to absorb far more readily than raw or powdered turmeric ever allows. At the same time, the beneficial bacteria produced during fermentation add their own gut-supporting benefits, meaning this single drink addresses inflammation and digestive balance simultaneously. For anyone managing joint stiffness or the kind of low-grade, chronic inflammation that quietly worsens with age, this is one of the most underused preparations available anywhere. To make it, grate or thinly slice 4 ounces of fresh turmeric root into a clean glass jar. Add a pinch of black pepper, which researchers have found meaningfully boosts curcumin absorption, and a teaspoon of raw honey. Fill the jar with filtered water, then stir in 2 tablespoons of liquid from an active kombucha or kefir batch to serve as a starter culture. Cover and leave at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until it turns slightly tangy, then strain and refrigerate. 1 small glass a day is the traditional dose, in a clay pot, while traditional is entirely optional. A plain glass jar produces identical results. Number 7. Amazake. In Japan, there is a drink so nutritionally complete that traditional healers once called it the beverage sent by the gods. Amazake has been made in Japanese households for well over 1,000 years, served at shrines, at festivals, and famously at the bedside of anyone recovering from fever, exhaustion, or an illness so severe that solid food was out of the question. Physicians reached for it specifically because it nourishes a depleted body without demanding much from a weakened digestive system. It's made by fermenting cooked rice with koji, a natural mold culture also used to make miso and sake, which breaks the rice starches down into simple, easily absorbed natural sugars while releasing a dense concentration of B vitamins, enzymes, and amino acids. Those natural sugars provide steady, accessible energy without the blood sugar spike that refined sugar produces, and the B vitamins, especially B1, B2, B6, and folic acid, directly support nervous system function and cellular energy production. B vitamin shortfalls are among the most common and most frequently overlooked contributors to the fatigue, mental fog, and low mood that many people over 60 simply chalk up to aging. Amazake is gentle enough for even the most sensitive stomach, and that gentleness is exactly why it was historically given to people who could not tolerate much else. To make it, cook 1 cup of short grain rice until very soft. Then let it cool to exactly 140 degrees Fahrenheit, since higher heat will destroy the koji culture. Stir in half a cup of dried koji rice, available at Japanese grocers and online. Place everything in a covered container wrapped in a towel, or set your slow cooker to its lowest setting, and leave it undisturbed for 6 to 10 hours until sweet and fragrant. Serve it warm as is, or blend it smooth and thin it with warm water. No added sugar is needed. It keeps refrigerated for up to 5 days. Number 8. Water kefir. If dairy has ever been the excuse standing between you and daily probiotics, Water kefir removes it entirely. No dairy, no complicated equipment, and a fermentation window of just 24 to 48 hours. Small crystal-like grains of bacteria and yeast, distinct from the grains used for dairy kefir, are added to sugar water, fruit juice, or coconut water and left to work, producing a lightly fizzy, refreshing drink packed with bacterial strains completely different from anything found in dairy kefir or kombucha. That difference matters more than it might seem. Your gut microbiome is not one uniform ecosystem that responds to a single type of probiotic. It is an enormous, diverse community made up of hundreds of different species, and different fermented drinks feed and support entirely different populations within it. Water kefir specifically introduces microbial diversity that dairy kefir and kombucha simply do not provide on their own. If you have taken antibiotics at any point in recent years, which wipe out large swaths of your gut bacteria indiscriminately, water kefir is one of the gentlest and most practical ways to start rebuilding what was lost. And because the grains multiply every single time you use them, one initial purchase can supply you for the rest of your life at essentially no ongoing cost. To make it, dissolve 3 tablespoons of cane sugar into 4 cups of filtered water. Add 2 tablespoons of water kefir grains. Cover with a cloth and let it sit at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours. Strain out the grains, refrigerate the liquid, and if you want natural carbonation and fruit flavor, add a splash of fruit juice to the strained kefir, seal it tightly, and let it sit another 24 hours before chilling. The grains go straight into a fresh batch of sugar water, and the cycle repeats indefinitely. Number 9. Jun Tea. Most people have at least heard of kombucha. Very few have encountered its rarer, more refined relative. Jun is made in much the same way as kombucha, with a living culture fermenting a sweetened tea base. But one key substitution changes everything about the final result. Instead of black tea and refined sugar, Jun uses green tea and raw honey. Green tea carries compounds that protect cells from oxidative stress and support brain health at levels black tea simply cannot match, while raw honey brings its own natural antimicrobial properties and unique sugars that actively feed beneficial gut bacteria rather than working against them the way refined sugar does. The specific culture used to ferment Jun, separate from a standard kombucha SCOBY, produces bacterial strains found in no other fermented beverage. Tradition holds that Tibetan monks developed and safeguarded this culture for centuries, relying on Jun as both a daily tonic and a remedy during periods of illness. A single cup delivers green tea's protective compounds, raw honey's healing properties, and a genuinely distinct probiotic profile all at once, making it a strong option for anyone looking for cognitive support alongside gut health. To make it, brew 2 liters of high-quality green tea and let it cool completely. Dissolve a cup of raw honey into the cooled tea, never into anything hot, since heat destroys honey's active compounds. Add your Jun culture along with a cup of starter liquid, cover with a cloth, and ferment at room temperature for 1 to 2 weeks. The finished flavor should be delicate, slightly floral, and pleasantly tart. Refrigerate once it reaches that point. Jun cultures are more temperature sensitive than kombucha SCOBYs and tend to do best in cooler rooms. Number 10. Shrub, also known as colonial drinking vinegar. Before dinner in colonial American households, families routinely drank a small glass of something that virtually no modern nutritionist recommends and almost no one has heard of today, a fruit-infused drinking vinegar meant to prepare the digestive system for the meal ahead. It disappeared from American tables around the same time chronic digestive complaints became one of the most commonly reported health issues in the country, and that timing is worth thinking about. A shrub is made by combining fresh or dried fruit with raw vinegar and a natural sweetener, letting them infuse together for several days until the fruit fully releases its flavor and compounds into the vinegar base, then diluting the resulting concentrated syrup into cold water before drinking. The acetic acid in the vinegar stimulates stomach acid production, and low stomach acid is now recognized as a major contributor to the bloating, indigestion, and uncomfortable fullness that many older adults manage by reaching for antacids, which only reduce stomach acid further and make the underlying issue progressively worse. A small shrub before a meal works in the opposite direction, supporting the body's natural digestive process instead of suppressing it. To make it, Combine a cup of fresh or frozen berries with a cup of raw apple cider vinegar in a glass jar, seal it, and refrigerate for 5 to 7 days, shaking it once daily. Strain out the fruit, pressing to extract every drop of liquid. Then stir in half a cup of raw honey or sugar until fully dissolved. This concentrated syrup keeps refrigerated for months. And to drink it, simply add 1 to 2 tablespoons to a glass of cold sparkling or still water. Elderberry, blackberry, and raspberry are the most traditional choices, and all three are worth trying. Number 11. Revitalize. In the 1960s, a woman named Anne Wigmore was told by her doctors that her degenerative condition was irreversible and that she should prepare herself for a life of steady decline. She refused to accept that outcome and instead returned to the traditional food practices she remembered watching her grandmother follow decades earlier, fermenting sprouted grains into a simple drink and consuming it daily alongside raw, living foods. Within months, her condition had improved dramatically enough that her own physicians described the change as unexpected, and she spent the rest of her life teaching others what she had discovered along the way. The drink at the center of her recovery was Revitalize, made by sprouting whole grains such as wheat berries, rye, quinoa, or buckwheat, then soaking those sprouted grains in water for roughly 2 days until natural fermentation kicks in. What results is a slightly cloudy, mildly tart liquid containing natural enzymes that support digestion, beneficial bacteria that support gut balance, and B vitamins including B12, one of the most commonly deficient nutrients among adults over 60 and one of the most essential for nerve function, energy production, and mental clarity. The sprouting step activates enzymes inside the grain that break down compounds which normally block mineral absorption, meaning Revitalize delivers its nutrition in a form the body can actually use. It costs almost nothing and requires no special equipment whatsoever. To make it, soak half a cup of whole wheat berries or quinoa in water for 8 hours, then drain and rinse. Leave the grains in a sprouting jar or any jar covered with cheesecloth, rinsing twice a day for 2 days until small sprouts appear. Place the sprouted grains in a clean jar, cover with 2 cups of filtered water, and leave at room temperature for 2 days. Strain and refrigerate the liquid, and drink half a cup before meals. The used grains can go into a second batch with fresh water before you finally compost them. Number 12. Fermented elderberry drink. Every autumn, without fail, grandmothers throughout the Appalachian region fermented elderberries, not as some deliberate wellness project, but as ordinary winter preparation, the same routine their mothers had followed and their mothers before them, carried forward because they had watched it work across enough hard winters and enough family illnesses to trust it completely. Elderberries contain compounds that researchers have studied extensively for their effects on immune function, with some laboratory findings suggesting certain elderberry compounds may interfere with the ability of viruses to enter healthy cells. These findings are promising and researchers are clear that they call for further clinical study, but the consistency of the evidence has sustained serious scientific interest for decades now. Fermentation adds something significant on top of the berry's natural properties. Breaking down its cellular structure and releasing active compounds in forms the body may absorb more readily than a simply cooked elderberry preparation. The beneficial bacteria produced along the way add gut-supporting benefits that heat-processed, shelf-stable elderberry syrup, which contains no live cultures at all, simply cannot offer. For anyone over 60, whose immune response naturally becomes less efficient over time, and whose gut microbiome has typically lost meaningful diversity compared to younger years, a fermented elderberry drink addresses both of those issues in a single glass. One important note: never eat raw elderberries, since they contain compounds that can cause nausea, and always cook or ferment them first, a step that makes them both safe and noticeably more beneficial. To make it, simmer 2 cups of fresh or dried elderberries in 4 cups of water for 20 minutes. Then let it cool completely and strain out the berries, reserving the liquid. Stir in 2 tablespoons of raw honey and 2 tablespoons of active water kefir liquid or kefir whey as a starter. Pour everything into a clean glass jar, cover with a cloth, and leave at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until it turns slightly tart and gently fizzy. Refrigerate it after that, and drink 2 to 3 ounces daily throughout the fall and winter months. And that closes out all 12 drinks, most of them costing next to nothing, all of them older than modern medicine itself, and every single one quietly disappeared from everyday kitchens the moment an industry figured out how to sell you something shelf-stable, processed, and far less effective instead. Start with whichever one feels the most approachable, whether that's a simple switchel you can mix in 90 seconds or a batch of kefir you set up once and maintain for years. Your gut, your joints, and your energy levels will notice the difference long before you expect to. If this video gave you something worth trying, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel before you go, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. There's a lot more where this came from, and I would genuinely love to have you back here for it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.